What's up, good family? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having an amazing day. Before we get started, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment right now. Answering this question is Dawn Staley, facing the toughest challenge of her career, because what's happening at South Carolina right now is something nobody saw coming. This is a program built on dominance, on depth, on breaking teams in the fourth quarter. And now South Carolina is fighting to survive with a roster held together by grit, freshmen, and faith. Injuries have flipped the script. Early enrolls are being rushed into the fire. Rotations are shrinking, and the question shaking. Women's college basketball is simple but dangerous. Can Dawn Staley fix this before it derails the season? We're talking about a team that used to wear opponents down, now being forced to reinvent itself in real time. We're breaking down the injury news, the early enrollee impact, the coaching chess moves, and why this moment could either expose cracks or create the most battle-tested version of South Carolina we've ever seen. So lock in, watch till the end, and don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, because this story isn't just about basketball, it's about pressure, legacy, and what happens when even the best are pushed to the edge. Let's get into it. In women's college basketball, there are programs that win games, and then there are programs that define eras. South Carolina under Dawn Staley has been the latter for more than a decade. The Gamecocks have represented stability, dominance, and depth. They were the team that never seemed rattled, never seemed short-handed, and never seemed unprepared when opponents ran out of gas in the fourth quarter. South Carolina usually looked like it was just getting started. That reputation is exactly why the question being asked in 2025 feels so strange. Can Dawn Staley fix South Carolina's roster crisis? To understand why this question even exists, you have to understand what South Carolina normally looks like. Under Staley, the program became known for recruiting elite talent at every position, stacking classes on top of one another, and developing players patiently. Injuries happened, as they do everywhere, but they rarely defined the season. If one player went down, another five-star recruit was usually ready to step in. Practices were competitive, rotations were deep, conditioning was an advantage. South Carolina didn't just beat teams, it wore them down. That's why the 2025 season feels like such a sharp departure from the norm. Instead of conversations about dominance and depth, the focus has shifted to availability, health reports, and who is physically able to suit up on a given night. Instead of asking how many players will score in double figures, fans and analysts are asking how many players will be available at all. The crisis didn't arrive all at once. It built slowly, the way these situations often do. A key injury here, another setback there, a player who is expected to be a cornerstone suddenly unavailable for the season. Each individual loss was manageable on its own, but together they began to chip away at something South Carolina rarely had to confront: vulnerability. As injuries mounted, practices became shorter and less competitive, lineups became inconsistent, roles changed from week to week. Players who were supposed to develop gradually were suddenly thrown into major minutes against elite competition. This is where the phrase roster crisis starts to make sense. It's not just about losing talent, it's about losing balance. Basketball teams rely on rhythm, the rhythm of practice, the rhythm of rotations, the rhythm of players understanding where they fit. When that rhythm disappears, even the most talented teams can look ordinary. And for South Carolina, a program built on structure and physical dominance, the disruption cut especially deep. Dawn Staley, however, has never been an ordinary coach. Her career, both as a player and as a coach, has been defined by adaptation. She has rebuilt this program before, transformed styles of play, and navigated changing eras of the sport, but this situation is different. From a rebuild, this is not a lack of talent coming in, it's not a cultural reset, it's a fight to hold things together while pieces are missing. The challenge for Staley is not just tactical, it's philosophical. When you no longer have depth, you can't coach the same way, you can't practice with the same intensity, you can't rotate players freely without worrying about fatigue. Every decision becomes heavier. Do you push players knowing they're carrying more minutes than expected, or do you conserve energy and risk losing sharpness? Do you simplify the system for younger players or trust them with complexity and live with mistakes? This is where the early enrollee conversation becomes important. Early enrolls are often discussed casually in recruiting circles, but in moments like this, they take on outsized importance. These are players who arrive ahead of schedule, sometimes still adjusting physically and mentally to the college game, and suddenly find themselves in a program that needs them, not later but now. They may not be ready to contribute at a high level immediately, but their presence alone can change practice dynamics. They add bodies, they allow drills to run, they create competition where there was scarce. Still early enrolls are not miracle cures, they are learning systems, terminology, defensive principles, and expectations that veterans have spent years mastering. Asking them to fill gaps created by injuries is a gamble. Sometimes it works beautifully, sometimes it exposes how steep the learning curve really is. Dawn Staley has always been careful with young players, but the roster situation forces her hand. Development timelines compress, mistakes happen on a bigger stage. At the same time, injuries have psychological impact that statistics never capture. Players don't just lose teammates, they lose certainty. Every awkward landing creates anxiety. Every minor knock feels bigger when the roster is already thin. Leaders are forced to lead while also carrying heavier physical burdens. Younger players feel pressure not just to perform, but to survive. The locker room tone shifts from confidence to resilience. What makes this story compelling is that Dawn Staley has never framed this situation as an excuse. Publicly, her messaging has been calm, measured, and direct. She acknowledges the challenges without dramatizing them. Internally, however, the work becomes more demanding. Coaching in this environment requires emotional intelligence as much as basketball knowledge. Players need reassurance without complacency. They need honesty without panic. They need belief without denial. Strategically, South Carolina has had to evolve. When you don't have the same size or numbers, you can't rely on overwhelming opponents. Physically, pace, spacing, and decision-making become more important. Defensive schemes may adjust to protect tired legs. Offensive sets may be simplified to reduce turnovers and conserve energy. The team's identity, once rooted in relentless pressure, begins to shift toward efficiency and control, and yet there are moments when adversity reveals something powerful. Players who might have remained role players discover they can carry responsibility. Freshmen learn faster Then expected because they have no choice. Leadership emerges from unexpected places. These moments don't erase losses, but they create growth that can shape the program long after the injuries heal. The central question: can Dawn Staley fix South Carolina's roster crisis? Ultimately depends on how fix is defined. If it means restoring full health immediately, the answer is no. No coach can reverse injuries with strategy alone. If it means returning to the overwhelming dominance of previous seasons right away, that too may be unrealistic. But if fixing the crisis means keeping the program competitive, cohesive, and mentally strong while laying groundwork for future success, then the answer looks very different. This season becomes less about banners and more about endurance, less about dominance and more about adaptability. Dawn Staley's legacy has never rested solely on wins and losses. It rests on culture, development, and sustainability. In that sense, the roster crisis is not a detour from her story, it's another chapter in it. By the time the season ends, South Carolina may not look like the juggernaut fans are used to seeing, but it may emerge tougher, wiser, and more prepared for what comes next. Early enrollees will know longer feel early. Young players will know longer feel untested. Veterans will have carried burdens that redefine leadership, and Dawn Staley once again will have shown that coaching greatness is not proven when everything goes right, but when everything goes wrong. And the foundations still hold. At the end of the day, this season is about resilience. South Carolina may be short on bodies, but it's not short on leadership. How Dawn Staley guides this team through adversity will shape the future of the program long after the season ends. Now it's your turn. Can she fix it? Or is the roster just too thin? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this breakdown, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Thanks for watching.